For years, Darcey Silva has been one of TLC's most recognizable faces. A woman whose life has unfolded on camera through heartbreaks, transformations, and endless reinventions. To millions of viewers, Darcey isn't just a reality star, she's a symbol of resilience, vulnerability, and the high emotional cost of chasing love in the public eye. But tonight, that familiar narrative is being challenged. Because behind the glam, the filters, and the carefully curated social media posts, a very different story has begun circulating. A story not about relationships or breakups, but about police records, leaked documents, and a series of events that TLC has never addressed publicly. This isn't a rumor from a fan page. This isn't gossip pulled from comment sections. What we're examining tonight are publicly accessible records, time-stamped incident logs, and leaked evidence that raise a single, explosive question: was Darcey Silva ever detained or questioned by law enforcement? And if so, why was it never discussed on the show? Let's be clear from the start. This investigation does not claim guilt. It does not declare a crime. What it does is lay out a trail of documents, inconsistencies, and silence, and asks why a reality network built on showing everything you chose not to show this. According to multiple sources who reached out to TLC Uncovered, Darcey's name appears in local police documentation connected to a disturbance call that occurred during the height of her filming years. The details are vague. The language is neutral. But the timing is impossible to ignore. No mugshot surfaced. No headline was made. And no explanation ever aired. Yet the record exists. And once you see where it fits into the larger timeline, the emotional breakdowns, the unexplained production pauses, the sudden narrative shifts, the silence becomes louder than any accusation. So tonight, we're doing what TLC never did. We're slowing the story down. We're separating fact from speculation. And we're asking the question fans were never encouraged to ask. If Darcey Silva's life was truly all on camera, what exactly happened off camera? And why does it matter now? Because when police records surface years later, and leaked evidence begins to circulate, it suggests something deeper than drama. To understand why this story matters, we need to look at the document that sparked it all. Not a headline. Not a tabloid leak. But a routine police incident log, the kind that usually goes unnoticed, filed away in a system few people ever search. This record didn't surface because TLC released it. It didn't surface because Darcey spoke about it. It surfaced because public records, by law, can't stay buried forever. According to documents reviewed by TLC Uncovered, Darcey Silva's name appears in a local police call for service report tied to a residential disturbance. The language is clinical. No drama. No conclusions. Just facts, a date, a location, and a response by officers. Importantly, the record does not list an arrest charge. It does not confirm criminal wrongdoing. And it does not state guilt. What it does confirm is police involvement at a time when cameras were rolling, or were supposed to be. The timing is what raised eyebrows. The call occurred during a period when viewers noticed something strange, a sudden tonal shift in Darcey's storyline. Episodes that felt disjointed. Emotional moments referenced but never fully shown. Conflicts hinted at, then quickly moved past without explanation. Reality television thrives on chaos, so why was this chaos missing? Sources familiar with reality production tell us that police involvement, even without an arrest, is considered a red flag event. Not because it proves wrongdoing, but because it introduces legal complexity, liability, insurance concerns, network risk. In other words, it's the kind of thing producers prefer to edit around, not explore. And that's exactly what appears to have happened here. The record itself is brief. It lists officers responding to a call, assessing the situation, and documenting names connected to the incident. Darcey's name appears not as a suspect, but as a party present. No charges filed. No follow-up publicly noted. So why does it matter? Because in reality TV, even minor police encounters are usually story gold. They're dramatic. They're emotional. They're human. And TLC has never shied away from airing them, unless there's a reason not to. And this is where leaked evidence enters the picture. Because shortly after this record began circulating among fans and researchers, audio fragments and internal production notes, allegedly tied to the same time frame, began appearing in private message chains and tip emails sent to this channel. We're not playing those clips yet. We're not making claims they can't support. But what they suggest is troubling. They suggest that this incident wasn't isolated. They suggest production knew something had happened. And they suggest a decision was made quietly to move on without addressing it on air. In reality television, silence is rarely accidental. So the question becomes, if nothing happened, why hide it? And if something did happen, why was the audience never told? In the next part, we'll zoom out and place this police record into the broader timeline of Darcey's on-screen breakdowns, unexplained absences, and sudden edits, and show you why this moment may be more important than it first appears once the police record is placed on the table. The next step isn't speculation, it's comparison. What was happening publicly in Darcey Silva's life at the exact moment this record was created? And more importantly, what suddenly changed right after? When we align the date of the police call with the broadcast timeline of 90 Day Fiancé and Darcey and Stacey, a pattern begins to emerge, not dramatic on its own, but impossible to ignore when viewed as a whole. In the weeks leading up to the incident, Darcey's storyline was escalating. Emotional instability, heightened conflicts, long, raw scenes where producers allowed moments to breathe. Arguments weren't cut short. Meltdowns weren't softened. The show leaned into the chaos. Then suddenly, it stopped. Episodes immediately following that timeframe show a noticeable shift. Scenes jump forward without explanation. Conversations are referenced as if viewers already saw them, but they didn't. Conflicts that should have peaked simply disappear, replaced by confessionals that feel rehearsed. Longtime fans noticed it right away. Online forums began asking questions. Why were scenes missing? Why did Darcey suddenly look emotionally exhausted, but never explained why? Why did entire days seem to vanish between episodes? This is where reality TV mechanics matter. When a production experiences an unexpected legal event, even something as minor as a police welfare check, protocols kick in. Footage is reviewed. Lawyers get involved. Insurance clauses are activated. Anything that could later be questioned in court becomes radioactive. Producers don't erase a storyline unless they have to. And sources familiar with unscripted television tell us something critical. Once police involvement enters a narrative, everything filmed around that time becomes legally sensitive, even if no charges are filed. So instead of addressing the moment directly, networks often do something quieter. They edit forward. They reframe the narrative. They act like nothing happened. But editing leaves fingerprints. Because viewers aren't stupid, and time gaps don't lie. According to one former production assistant who contacted TLC Uncovered under condition of anonymity, there was a noticeable freeze during filming around this period. Crew schedules were rearranged, shooting locations changed, and some footage was quietly flagged as a do not use. No explanation was given on set. Just instructions. Again, this doesn't prove wrongdoing. But it does prove intervention. And that intervention raises a bigger question: why was Darcey's story suddenly treated differently than others on the network? We've seen TLC air arrests before. We've seen police called on cast members. We've seen restraining orders, court dates, and legal fallout become entire story arcs. So why was this moment handled with silence? The answer may lie not in what happened that day, but in what was already happening behind the scenes. Tensions, pressure, contracts, and a reality star under more scrutiny than ever before. In the next part, we'll examine leaked internal communication, not to sensationalize it, but to understand how decisions are made when reality collides with liability. As questions around the police record grew, something else began to surface, quietly at first, then with increasing urgency. Messages, emails, internal notes. Not released publicly, not confirmed by TLC, but shared by individuals who claim to have worked adjacent to production during that period. We're calling them what they are: leaked communications. Unverified on their own, but powerful when placed next to the timeline we've already examined. According to multiple sources who contacted TLC Uncovered, internal discussions took place shortly after the incident log date. The subject wasn't guilt or blame, it was risk. Words like exposure, optics, and narrative control appear repeatedly in summaries of those conversations. One message, paraphrased to protect identities, focused on whether footage from that week should be held back indefinitely. Another referenced a temporary pause on certain story beats, with a note to reintroduce conflict later under safer framing. This is how reality television handles uncertainty. Not by confronting it head-on, but by editing around it. What's striking is how quickly this internal caution translated into what viewers saw. Emotional moments became shorter. Confrontations lost context. Darcey's reactions were still present, but the catalyst behind them was gone. To the audience, it felt confusing. To production, it felt controlled. And then there's the audio. We want to be extremely clear here. The audio clips circulating are not police recordings. They are not 911 calls. They are fragments of voice notes and production conversations that allegedly reference the incident without naming it directly. In one clip, a voice discusses keeping it off camera and moving forward clean. In another, there's mention of not giving the audience something that invites questions. Again, these clips do not accuse. They do not confess. They suggest strategy. And strategy only exists when there's something to manage. Industry insiders tell us this kind of response is rare, but not unheard of, when a storyline intersects with legal gray areas. Even a routine police welfare check can trigger caution if it coincides with emotionally volatile footage. From a network's perspective, the safest story is the one that avoids interpretation altogether. So they pivot. They redirect focus. They repackage emotion. They move the audience forward before anyone notices what was left behind. But fans noticed. They noticed Darcey's demeanor change. They noticed sudden absences explained vaguely as a stress. They noticed that certain conflicts were referenced but never replayed. And now, years later, when these leaked communications are read alongside a real police record, the pattern becomes harder to dismiss. Not because it proves wrongdoing, but because it reveals intentional silence. In the next part, we'll explore the most important question of all, why Darcey's storyline required this level of protection, and whether the network's response helped her, or ultimately hurt her. To understand why this incident may have been handled so delicately, we have to step away from documents for a moment and look at the human being at the center of it all. Because long before police records or leaked communications entered the conversation, Darcey Silva was already showing signs of emotional overload. This wasn't hidden. It was broadcast. Viewers watched Darcey cycle through intense highs and devastating lows. We saw tears, panic, desperation for reassurance, and a growing sense that the pressure of constant filming was taking a toll. Confessionals became heavier. Her body language changed. Her reactions grew sharper, then suddenly withdrawn. Mental health experts who reviewed episodes from this period, speaking generally, not about Darcey specifically, point out that prolonged reality TV exposure can create a feedback loop. Personal crises become content. Content becomes pressure. And pressure magnifies every emotional response. Now place that reality next to a police welfare check. Not an arrest. Not charges. But a moment where outside authorities step in, often because someone nearby is concerned. From a production standpoint, this changes everything. Because once a situation moves from on-camera drama to off-camera intervention, the narrative no longer belongs solely to the show. It enters a space where ethics, liability, and responsibility intersect. And this may explain what happened next. After the alleged incident, Darcey's portrayal subtly shifted. The show leaned more into transformation arcs, self-love, empowerment, fresh starts, while avoiding deeper exploration of what triggered the emotional spiral in the first place. Pain was still shown, but context was removed. According to a source close to post-production, there was concern that continuing to air footage from that period could be interpreted as exploitation rather than documentation. Whether that concern came from the network, legal advisors, or production executives remains unclear. What is clear is that Darcey's most vulnerable moments were suddenly treated as something to be contained, not expanded. And this raises a difficult question. Was the silence meant to protect the network, or protect Darcey herself? Because the irony is this, by not addressing the incident openly, TLC may have created the very speculation it hoped to avoid. Fans filled in the gaps. Rumors replaced facts. And years later, a simple police log now carries more weight than it ever should have. If TLC had addressed it directly, explained it, contextualized it, moved on, the story might have ended there. But silence invites interpretation. And that silence followed Darcey long after filming wrapped. To understand why Darcey Silva's alleged police incident feels so different, we need to look at TLC's track record. Because this network has never shied away from controversy. Over the years, TLC has openly aired police encounters, arrests, domestic disputes, restraining orders, and even jail time involving cast members across the 90-day Fiancé universe. Mugshots have been discussed. Court dates have been referenced. In some cases, entire storylines were built around legal trouble. So the question becomes unavoidable: why was Darcey's situation handled differently? Let's look at the pattern. When incidents involve criminal charges, TLC often leans in. Drama fuels ratings. Legal consequences create cliffhangers. Viewers tune in to see fallout, accountability, and confrontation. But Darcey's situation, according to available records, appears to fall into a very different category. This was not a criminal arrest in the traditional sense. No booking photo. No charges filed. No court proceedings made public. Instead, everything points to a welfare-based intervention, the kind of police response meant to assess safety, not assign guilt. And that distinction matters. Because airing a welfare check crosses a line TLC rarely touches. It shifts the narrative from messy reality TV into mental health territory, a space where public scrutiny can do real harm. Multiple former reality TV producers have explained that once a situation is classified as a wellness concern, networks become extremely cautious. Airing it can open the door to backlash, lawsuits, and accusations of exploiting vulnerability. In short, it's no longer good TV. It's a liability. And Darcey, more than almost any other cast member, has always been positioned as emotionally exposed. Her pain wasn't a secret. It was part of her brand: tears, heartbreak, self-worth struggles, and deep emotional dependency. So if a moment occurred where off-camera authorities felt the need to step in, TLC may have faced a choice: expose it, or protect her. And protection doesn't always mean kindness. Sometimes it means erasure. Because what followed wasn't clarity, it was silence. The show never explained sudden tone shifts. Storylines were redirected. And scenes that might have provided context were reportedly cut. Fans noticed. Online forums from that time are filled with confusion. Viewers sensed something had happened, something real, but couldn't pinpoint what. That uncertainty became fuel for rumors far worse than the truth might have been. And that's the danger of hiding reality in a show built on a reality. By avoiding the subject entirely, TLC may have unintentionally allowed the word arrest to enter the conversation, even when records don't clearly support that conclusion. Which brings us to the most important question of all. Who controls the narrative when cameras stop rolling? Because once footage is edited, scenes are removed, and explanations are withheld, the audience fills in the blanks, and those blanks don't always lead to fairness. In the next part, we'll examine what Darcey herself has said, and not said, about this period, and whether her silence was a personal choice, or part of a larger agreement. When allegations swirl, most reality stars respond quickly. They deny. They clarify. Or they distract. But Darcey Silva did something very different. She went quiet. Not completely silent, but carefully quiet. During the months following the alleged police incident, Darcey continued posting on social media. She shared glamour shots, inspirational quotes, and fashion promotions. On the surface, everything looked normal. But longtime viewers noticed something strange. She never addressed the sudden emotional shift fans had witnessed on screen. She never explained why certain storylines abruptly ended. And she never once denied the rumors directly. Instead, Darcey leaned heavily into one repeating theme: healing. Her captions became filled with phrases like, protecting my peace, choosing myself, and, the truth doesn't need defending. These weren't statements of innocence or guilt, they were statements of survival. And that matters. Because when public figures are falsely accused, they usually push back hard. Silence allows rumors to grow. Silence can damage a brand. Unless that silence is strategic. In one interview around that time, Darcey was asked a vague but telling question about her mental health. The interviewer referenced a difficult off-camera period and asked how she managed to get through it. Darcey paused, being taken into custody and being arrested. There's a difference between police involvement and criminal guilt. And there's a massive difference between what the public assumes and what records actually show. In the final part, we're going to break that down clearly, separating fact from rumor, responsibility from assumption, and ask the question that matters most after everything we've examined: the police records, the silence, the edits, the rumors, and the unanswered questions. One truth stands above the rest. This story was never really about an arrest. It was about control of the narrative. Reality television promises access, but it also decides limits. It shows breakdowns, but hides boundaries. It profits from pain, but draws the line when that pain stops being entertaining and starts being real. Darcey Silva has lived her life under a microscope for years. Her emotions became storylines. Her relationships became plot devices. Her vulnerabilities became memes. And when something happened that didn't fit the usual reality TV mold, something private, serious, and potentially harmful if exploited, the cameras looked away. That choice left a vacuum. And into that vacuum rushed speculation. The word arrested gained power not because it was proven, but because it was never addressed. Silence allowed assumptions to grow louder than facts. And in a digital world, perception often travels faster than truth. What we do know is this: there is no confirmed criminal case tied publicly to Darcey Silva. There is no verified charge that supports the most extreme claims. And there is no evidence that conclusively proves a criminal arrest as the headlines suggest. What there is a reminder that police records don't always mean guilt, that reality TV doesn't show everything, and that human beings exist behind the edits. If Darcey experienced a moment where authorities were involved for safety or wellness, that moment doesn't define her, and it doesn't belong to the public by default. At TLC Uncovered, our goal isn't to convict or defend. It's to question narratives, examine context, and separate drama from reality. Because the most dangerous stories aren't the ones filled with lies, they're the ones filled with missing information. And until full transparency exists, the only responsible conclusion is this: curiosity should never outweigh compassion. And silence doesn't always mean guilt. Sometimes, it just means a line was finally drawn. If you believe reality TV should come with accountability, not exploitation, make sure you're subscribed to TLC Uncovered.